When I was 24 years old, I skateboarded across the length of New Zealand, and I did it with one of my best friends. We did it on regular shortboards, regular skateboards, not longboards, because we're skaters. And even though it was way harder, that's just the end of the discussion. You know, we skated down endless roads, up and down countless mountains. At one point, we had to cross a rushing glacial river, which was really dumb and super cold. When it was time to eat food, we would open up a can of spaghetti. I don't know if you've ever heard of canned spaghetti, but it exists, and we ate it 3 times a day. At night, when we had to sleep, we would set our tent up on the side of the highway that we were skateboarding on, which was actually pretty sketchy now that I'm talking about it in hindsight. And 1,366 kilometers later, I realized that if I wanted to change the world, I had to change how I was looking to do it. It's a really important thought to think about, and it took me a long time. Before that skate started, I was kind of just doing nothing, looking at my phone, scrolling through my Facebook news feed, and then refreshing and doing that again. And I'm not alone. A lot of people are like that. It turns out that 4 in 10 millennials report spending more time with their phone than they do with their partner or their friends, more time than they spend with their parents, more time than they spend with their kids, their children. So what are we doing? Why are we doing this? What are we looking for hour after hour? I know when I started asking myself that question, really started asking myself that question, I realized that I'd been looking for something different. I was looking for something new. And what it turned out I was looking for was change. But I wanted it to be really positive, and I wanted it to affect as many people as possible. And when I started thinking more about it, I felt anxious. I thought, what strategies will I use? Where will I find the resources? And how will I even begin? And as soon as those questions start flowing in, I got overwhelmed and I got scared. And suddenly I found myself back into that newsfeed, wasting time. But that's a really common feeling. A lot of people experience that anxiety. I'm not alone in that. So how do we change that feeling that starts in our hearts with a deep, profound journey and feeling for change and ends with us just watching a video of a kitten and a mouse that are best buds? How do we avoid that? Well, when I think about that question, I actually want to flip it a little bit. So how can the fact that millions of people are watching this video of a kitten and a mouse that are best friends and they cuddle and it's adorable, because you can't not watch that video. But how can watching that video lead to deep ethical change? Flip it just a little bit. So today I'm going to talk to you about a few things. How you can raise tons of money for charity without changing anything you do. How you can prevent billions of tons of waste from going into the landfill without changing anything that you do. And how you can create clean, renewable energy without changing anything that you do. How? I think that the potential for social change exists in everything we're already doing. We just need to change the way we're looking for it. So how were we changing the world by skateboarding across New Zealand? Well, the guy that I was with was named Rob Dyer, and he had started an organization called Skate for Cancer. What he would do is skate from one side of a country to the other, and while he was doing it, he was hoping to raise awareness for cancer. On top of that, he would be providing preventative knowledge for young people to learn that was easy and proactive methods to prevent cancer. But most importantly, he wanted to inspire people with the thought that you can overcome any obstacle that you set your mind to as long as you set your mind to it. So while we were on the road, we were actually on a mission. We were activists. That was a really intense skate. We saw a lot of different things. We were welcomed by countless different people. But what was most important about it is it sparked my interest in social innovation, because it taught me to dramatically change the way I was looking at how I could accomplish it, how I could change the world. It all came down to just flipping it slightly. Fast forward a couple years to a time when I started an organization with a group of my best friends called Dudebox. So Dudebox has raised almost $150,000 for charity, but what is it that we actually do? Aside from it being a ridiculous name that I will have tattooed on my body for the rest of my life, much to the chagrin of my mother. Hi, Mom. It's also a nonprofit, do-it-yourself, third-party fundraising organization, which is a lot of words. But what we actually do is we find really unique venues. We fill them with people for a night. We throw an amazing event. At the end of the night, when everyone leaves, we return the venue back to the way we found it, and then we donate all the money that we've raised to charity. It sounds pretty straightforward, but we've encountered a couple challenges in the past, like the time we had to turn this CrossFit gym into basically a nightclub for the night, and then when everyone left, we had to transform it back into a CrossFit gym. This was the greatest workout of my life. I don't know what they're doing with those giant tires, but we had to lift them. It was real tricky. It all really started when we lived in this gnarly loft in downtown Toronto. There was a group of us, and we had this absentee landlord that just didn't seem to care about basic things, important things like plumbing, heating, I don't know, walls. Just had no real interest in those things, but that was okay because we really didn't care about them either. What it led to was a recipe for house parties, and we had a ton of those. We didn't do it to raise money. We didn't do it to make money. We just threw parties because we thought it was fun. But after years of people jumping on your roof and all through your living room, your bedroom, your kitchen, things kind of tend to fall apart. I remember one time, one of the guys went to the washroom when the party had ended, and he was like, "Oh, dude, it's gone." And sure enough, someone had taken our toilet, someone had taken half our sink. I don't know why they did that, but we learned how to build a bathroom that week. And we were able to keep up with that kind of thing for a while. But eventually, with that many people coming through our place, one really integral part of an apartment started disappearing, and that was the floor. It was sinking. So we decided it was time to move. We had to make a move. But everybody kept asking us, what are you going to do about the parties? Are you going to still throw them? And we thought, yeah, we would like to do that too. So we looked around, and we found a place where we could do it. But they had expenses that we'd never encountered before. And we figured the only way that we could afford to pay it was charge people a couple dollars to get into the party. That also meant that there may be a little bit of profit, but there were 7 of us, and we didn't really want to bicker over who gets how much money, a couple dollars for that guy, a couple dollars for that other guy. We figured it would be bad for our friendship, so we just all agreed, let's give it to charity. Now, a couple of the dudes have some family in Africa, living in Kenya and Somalia, and so we found a charity that allows you to purchase animals for people living in rural African villages, which can have a massive impact on their life. You can buy chickens, goats, and the biggest thing that you can buy is a cow. So obviously we were like, okay, let's buy one of those. And we decided to call that party Cash Cow. We didn't really know what to expect, but a ton of people came through. It was a huge success, and so many people came through that we were able to raise double what we expected and buy 2 cows, which was surprising and really, really sick. Since then, we've scaled this model up, and our struggle at this point is finding a space that's big enough to fit all the people. We used art galleries, empty retail stores, warehouses. Most recently, we threw an event in a decommissioned generating station, which was like 4 football fields long, and about 3,000 people came through. So it was a really exciting party, and we raised a lot of money for charity. Now, when we moved out of that house, we could have just stopped, because you saw the bathroom, you saw the CrossFit gym. It's not always easy, but we kept going. And when that first revenue-generating event raised double what we set out to do, we could have bought 1 cow, and we could have split the rest of the money between us. We could have bought ourselves a dinner, whatever, but we didn't. We saw magic in this model and realized that if we just flipped something we were already doing all the time, we could turn it into a vehicle for social change. Now, when people talk about social change, I think everybody's picturing things like the Stonewall riots or the Occupy Wall Street movement. More recently, what's going on in North Dakota at Standing Rock. And these are all phenomenal examples of protest and revolution. And they've accomplished amazing things through a very courageous model. But they all suffer from some similar challenges. They have to overcome the fear that I had talked about earlier. They have to overcome the complacency that comes from the fear. And if they manage to do that, now they have to overcome the fatigue that people experience after a prolonged period of protest. And unfortunately, a lot of them haven't been able to survive these challenges. You know, activism is hard. Historically, it's just really, really difficult to get people to disrupt their lives and make big sacrifices. Either they don't want to do it or they're not able to do it. And it's a really challenging thing to keep people motivated and keep them on board. Or even worse, you can't get them on board in the first place. But we've arrived at a time where we can really blow that whole thing open. We can think of it more progressively, more creatively. We've arrived at a time when we can use the things that had previously dismantled our movements to our advantage. Now, this is a philosophy that's really well captured in the martial art of jiu-jitsu. In jiu-jitsu, you use the energy that's coming at you from your opponent and use it against them to defeat them. So instead of fighting against them, you fight with them. You use the energy instead of opposing it. It's a very simple philosophy, and it works beautifully with social change. I think that the amount of times that you check your Instagram in a day doesn't really matter. Maybe you check it 5 times, maybe you check it 10 times, maybe 20, maybe 100. It doesn't matter because you want to do it, so you're going to do it, right? What I want to know is, how can checking your Instagram account end deforestation? You're doing it already, so why can't we use it to our advantage? How can buying a cup of coffee prevent systemic racism? How can downloading a podcast help educate people on mental health issues? Maybe they can. Maybe all we have to do is start to think slightly differently about the things we're already doing every single day. Now, this is where that kitten and mouse come back into play. Look, if millions of people are watching that video, we have to figure out a way to use that energy to our advantage towards something greater. And if that sounds crazy, think back to 2014 when the Ice Bucket Challenge went viral. The ALS Association benefited from the fact that people would much rather watch a viral video or be in a viral video than canvass their neighborhoods or organize fundraisers. Man, $113 million was raised that year alone from that video. It gives me shivers. And that doesn't even consider the massive awareness campaign, the free marketing, spreading the knowledge that the ALS Association was so determined to share. What's so cool about this philosophy is it really starts looking at your day-to-day actions, and suddenly they don't seem passive. In fact, they can be extremely powerful, and that's what I love about this. So I'm going to walk you through a couple different examples that show that this is a totally reasonable idea. It's not nearly as complicated as you think. I'm literally going to walk you through it. So right now, what does it look like I'm doing? Walking. Just walking across the stage. But if you look at it and flip it slightly, you can see something significantly different. What I'm doing right now is generating 7 watts of energy with each step that I take. And we can harness that energy, and we can store it for later use. There's a company that has figured out how to do this called Pavigan, and they've spread tiles throughout high foot traffic areas all around the world to do just that. They've installed these tiles in a subway platform in France, a super busy subway platform with people coming and going every single day, and all of those commuters rushing to their trains on and off are creating energy. They're actually generating enough energy to power some of the lights in the building and a couple USB charging ports for their phones. Now, I know that's not a revolution, but it's the start of one. Because what's happening right now is people-powered technology. These commuters don't even know that they're participating in social activism, so they can't experience fear. They can't experience complacency. And they won't get fatigue unless they just get exhausted from walking back and forth to wherever they're going. So we're harnessing something that's happening all over the world and using it to activate something new, just by looking at it slightly differently. All right, I'm going to give you one other example. Plastic cutlery. And plastic cutlery. It's estimated that we produce 40 billion plastic spoons, forks, and knives every year so that people can eat takeout food. And only 6% of this type of plastic is recyclable. That means that we are putting billions of tons of waste into the landfill, basically for eternity, or it's going straight into the ocean, which means it's going straight back into our bodies, which is gross. And it's also really sad. But what are you going to do, right? Well, there's a company in India that figured something out. They're called Bakies, and they've discovered a product that is totally compostable, and it biodegrades 6 days after you throw it out. Oh, and you can eat it. It's edible. There are 8 different flavors of these things, right? It's brilliant. It's just a small idea that acknowledged a very basic reality. People are eating takeout food all over the world and producing billions of tons of waste. But if we look at how to prevent that without pushing against those hungry masses, maybe we can completely alter this. Small idea, huge impact. Now, I know that you're sitting there going like, dude, I'm not going to invent some cutlery that I can eat my food with, and then I can eat my cutlery and it saves the world. I get that. I'm not asking you to be the next maverick of social innovation and come up with some brilliant solution. All I'm asking is that you start paying close attention to the things that you're doing every single day. Pay closer attention to the things people around you are doing every single day. And open your heart up to the possibility that they can have powerful meaning and affect great change. Remember, to create social change, you don't necessarily have to change anything that you're doing. Maybe you just have to change the way you're looking at it. And a really important thing to take from this, it's the last thing I want to leave you with, is this thought. If everything that you're doing has the potential to create social change, then you, the person doing it, are good. Everything that you do has power. That means that you are a good, powerful person. And I think that right now especially, it's something that we need to remind ourselves of much more often. Thank you so much.